Since I haven't been able to stream the last couple of weeks, I thought, why not make something useful? It's not a finished or complete run, but just like in academia, we can call this a work in progress. For those of my regulars who don't like this sort of thing, bless your heart. Next episode is Saturday, as usual. There is only one rule. When you commit with any given ash of war or weapon skill, doing continuous damage, you don't let go of the button until it's done. That's it. A casual, fun run. With us arriving in Limgrave, the run has begun, and we go to Liurnia straight away because of the Blood Flame Blade incantation and the Faith Talisman. It's time to do the basic setup. Get some goodies, take a small detour to Caelid, where we locate half of the Dexter's medallion, and obtain a juicy talisman. Back in Limgrave, we find a staff and head south to Castle Morn, where we are going to do the very first kill. We encounter a most noble gentleman who unfortunately has to suffer. We finally have our first key item for the run, and it's not his weapon, it's his skill. Back north, I set shop up as a farmer over and over again until I've had enough and decide to maximize with another strat altogether. Thankfully, modernization is beneficial. We get our desired weapon, do some basic upgrading, catch an essential incantation, and finally go see another friendly guy, who unfortunately also has to go into the clearing at the end of the path. Remember to read the Dark Tower if you haven't. And no, it's not only because of a base lack of morals. We actually need his armor. It's really excellent. Except for the helmet, which is a crime against humanity. We are now ready to pay a visit to a couple of fellas who protect a certain weapon. I realize, though, that I'm not able to do that just yet, so I return to Liurnia, where I also fail. I need something bigger. So, back at Weeping, we pay a visit to a most hideous creature. It's upgrade time, and now he's going to get it. I still need to get grounded, though, and have to get my hands on the Bull Goat Talisman. And now I'm finally allowed to give some love to that hideous Cleanrod Knight, who, truth be told, really deserves oblivion. Things turn out well. I get the desired talisman and then pay a visit to Margit, who is really mean to me. So much that it makes me realize that I need something else. The spear talisman. It doesn't really matter though. Margit is still being a bully. So I decide to return to Liurnia once again, get some upgrade materials and some money. Now I'm ready to pay Margit a visit. With our sad alpha male out of the way, we have now 2 talisman pouches, and are ready to return to that strange couple. We are blessed with a magnificent shield, But before we actually use that, I need a snack, some smithing stones, and an important lesson in how annoying that blue fellow can be. He is not up for grabs at this point. We venture back to Limgrave, where I make sure we're able to get a specific spell that is going to make a difference later on. We do some basic memory stone upgrading, obtain the other half of the medallion, talk to a maiden and a ruffian, and head north, because we need something. After dealing with the obese fire fellow, we march ever on, pick up the fire scorpion talisman, and return to the demi-human. Who in turn grants us a beneficial gift, this gorgeous object. Now we are ready to go into a dialogue with a rot-infested tree. And even though it's quite unpleasant, things turn out well in the end. Here we obtain 2 essential crystal tears. I try to convince some local bullies to leave that maiden alone, and then head north to the academy. But the real fun is the non-verbal communication delivered to the parry nightmare. I almost feel bad. And now we have come to the second most troublesome boss of this entire run, the depraved sorceress. The first phase is a walk in the park as usual, but what I didn't realize was this. No matter what I did, I wasn't able to do anything about that. So, yearning for a victory of some sort, I returned to Stormvale and hung out with Godric. Around this time, my NVIDIA drivers decided to mess everything up. I got an essential incantation, visited the manor, and gave this visually unappealing fellow a warm welcome. Sadly, it was becoming obvious that I was hitting a wall. So I took it upon myself to talk to Mr. White, tried a couple of NPC invasions, and just wanted to feel some sort of control. So I became a stealthy, grim reaper. I returned to Mr. White, travelled to the Village of Madness, got my ass handed to me by Frenzy Boy, and was finally able to finish the requests of that creepy guy. I was given the opportunity to go to Mogwin's palace, and I could do this strange exercise, which in turn gave me the white mask. Naturally, I needed that glorious smithing stone while being here. With this newfound power, I felt a distinct urge to slash a certain someone. The brute finally out of the way, that elusive Samba 7 was mine. I hung out for a bit with some of them froggies and ended saying "frack you" to that troublesome host. Very late, I also saw the wisdom in acquiring the iron wet blade. Naturally, I had to go get the blue dancer talisman as well. That combo was needed for a very specific purpose, namely a most impolite attack. Dressed up with only the white mask and blue dancer talisman, I took Commander O'Neill out for a date. Did my best to avoid his minions, and then began that crazy long quest line nearby. Finally, after much ado, I ended up going into the arena with that depraved sorceress one last time. This had taken so many attempts, so many different strats, and honestly, I didn't think this attempt would be the one, considering just how much those juvenile scholars trolled me. This way, that way, they even threw books at me and messed up my buffs. In the end, though, everything worked out beautifully. After attending to that hideous lady, mother of sick offspring, it was a small matter to enter the capital. Inside that moody capital, I burned down some trees, but also found the single most difficult part of this entire run. In fact, he pestered me so much that I had to resort to overly creative approaches. Sneaking up on a disgusting tree spirit and scorching it to oblivion. All because of a usually unimpressive crystal tear. After that, I sought out the depths beneath the capital, got the shackle, took a brief detour to Caelid, where I picked up some stones. Tried out the lightning infusion, got the talisman, and naturally the lightning crystal tear. Unfortunately, none of that mattered at all. I had to poise up and invest in vigor. But before that, I desperately needed to have a good time. So I got the bleed talisman. I returned to weeping and made sure to get the ugliest sword in the entire game. I also decided to finally bolster my defenses. I picked up the defense talisman and got some crap. But what truly gave me the courage to muster on was the fact that I got this nasty rot fellow in the bag. I had been visiting him from time to time, but now it worked out. In the end, I had to accept that I needed some vigor. Sadly, before I could go any further, I had to make sure I spoke to Patches. At that point, we were ready for the Omen King. As we near the end of this part of the run, I had the pleasure of stun-locking a few NPCs. But naturally, my flamethrower was far more gratifying. Was also ready to face a most bothersome individual, one I hadn't dared to face since the very beginning. The shield also turned out to be quite practical as we approached the commander. All right, from this point on, something unfortunate happened to my video quality. I went to a silent retreat without all of my gear, so you'll have to survive the 1440p upscale here, as well as a random, terrible audio. The solution to Radahn turned out to be as follows. Do the basic buffing outside of the arena, but also just get as close as you can, as quickly as you can. Back off a bit. Do the endure while also applying the Blood Flame Blade Oath, and just pray to the gods of RNG. Unfortunately, I also had to finish off myself, so to speak, and it turned out to be too much of a hassle, which is quite sad, actually. But one of the individuals I really had difficulties with was this Irish fellow way up north. The secret source, and I realized this very late, was just go to him right away and give it your best. No waiting, no buffing inside of the arena, just rip and tear. Fun fact, this particular putrid avatar, the last one in the game that I did at least, turned out to be by far the easiest one. And finally, after a great deal of suffering, it also turned out that the solution for the fire giant was more or less the exact same thing as with Commander O'Neill. Head straight into the midst of it, go between his legs, repulsive I know, and just do that nasty thing. A pretty tedious creature, this Magnavurm, but apparently the solution was to wait for a very specific moment and then capitalize on the wealth that is RNG. And here we come to what must be my best duo win of all time. I don't plan on doing this anytime soon, I can tell you that much. But for some reason, having them both together at the same time turned out to be crucial. Staying in the middle of those two, no matter how vile and disgusting that sounds, made this possible. Combined naturally with some grafted goodies and the spear talisman. Unfortunately, I also had to make sure that my friend Alexander wandered into the clearing at the end of the path. And the same thing applied for that sadly impotent knight guarding Malekith. And speaking of that brutish dog, at long last we arrive at Malekith, who turned out to be most susceptible to fire. And notice how I don't move an inch. And here we go. The last interesting fight in this run was the good Godfrey, who initially turned out to be really difficult for me. It took I don't know how many experiments to realize that waiting for him to actually come all the way down here in order not to jump around like an insane person
was the key. And in regards to the second phase, I found out that you could actually dodge even, being a bit bloated. And now we arrive at the end of the run because Radahn turned out to be a pushover. But that doesn't really matter because that tiresome jelly monster by the name of Elden Blob never stays put. If any of you have good ideas how to deal with this problem, shout out. But either way, this was fun. But I don't think I'll try out any more of these insane